Commander James Chen stood at the edge of the Grand Hall and watched the alien diplomats argue. He was a young officer from Earth, sent to represent humanity at the most important meeting in the galaxy. The summit was held aboard the Imperial flagship called the Throne of Stars. It was a massive ship, bigger than any city James had ever seen. Representatives from 12 different species had gathered here to discuss trade and peace. James was not important. He knew this. Earth had only recently joined the galactic community, and humans were still considered newcomers. The older species looked at humans the way adults look at children who have wandered into a serious meeting. They tolerated humanity, but they did not respect them yet. Still, James did his job. He took notes. He carried messages. He smiled at everyone because that was what humans did. A smile cost nothing. Sometimes it helped. It was during the third day of the summit that James first noticed her. She stood across the Great Hall,
surrounded by guards in silver armor.
Her skin was pale blue, almost like ice in moonlight. Her eyes were large and dark, and her white hair fell past her shoulders like fresh snow. She wore robes of deep purple, the color of Varanthi royalty. James knew who she was immediately. Everyone knew Princess Keleth, the only daughter of Emperor Vorith, ruler of the Varanthi Empire. The Varanthi were one of the oldest and most powerful species in the galaxy. They had built empires when humans were still living in caves. They were known for two things. First, their incredible technology. Second, their complete control over their emotions. A Varanthi never smiled. A Varanthi never cried. To show feeling was considered weak and shameful in their culture. James expected the princess to look away when their eyes met. Instead, she kept staring at him. Her face showed nothing, but her gaze was intense. James felt uncomfortable under such attention. He looked down at his tablet and pretended to read something important. When he looked up again, she was still watching him. This happened again the next day. And the day after that, wherever James went in the summit halls, he would eventually spot Princess Keleth somewhere nearby. She never approached him. She never spoke to him. That would have been unthinkable. A Varanthi princess speaking directly to a human? The scandal would have been enormous, but she watched him constantly, like a scientist studying a strange new creature. James mentioned this to his senior officer, Ambassador Roberts. "Stay away from her," Roberts warned. "The Varanthi are proud people. If they think you are bothering their princess, they will demand your removal, or worse." James nodded and tried to follow this advice. But it was difficult to avoid someone who seemed to be everywhere he went. On the 7th day of the summit, everything changed. The negotiations had become tense. Two delegations were arguing about mining rights to a distant asteroid field. Voices grew loud. Threats were made. For a moment, it seemed like the entire summit might collapse. James stood against the wall, watching helplessly. He noticed Princess Keleth nearby, also watching. Her face was as blank as ever, but her hands were clasped tightly together. James realized she was worried too. Without thinking, James did something simple. He caught her eye and smiled at her. Not a big smile, just a small one. A human gesture that said, "This is bad, but it will be okay." Princess Keleth froze. Her dark eyes went wide. For just a moment, something flickered across her face. Surprise? Fear? James could not tell. Then she turned and walked quickly out of the hall, her guards hurrying to follow. James felt his heart sink. He had made a terrible mistake. Ambassador Roberts grabbed his arm. "What did you do?" "I just smiled at her," James said. "I was trying to be friendly." Roberts looked pale. "Friendly? To a Varanthi princess?" "James, you may have just insulted her. You may have started an incident. Do you understand how serious this is?" James understood. He spent the rest of the day waiting for angry Varanthi guards to come and arrest him. But nothing happened. The summit continued. The crisis was resolved through other means, and Princess Keleth did not appear in the halls for the rest of the day. That night, James sat alone in his quarters. They were small and simple, nothing like the grand rooms given to important diplomats. He had a bed, a desk, a small window that showed the stars outside. He was writing his daily report when his tablet chimed with a new message. The message had no sender name. It contained only one line: "Leave your door unlocked tonight." James stared at the words for a long time. His first thought was that this was a trap. Someone wanted to harm him, to punish him for his mistake with the princess. His second thought was that he should report this message to security immediately. But something stopped him. The message felt different. It did not feel like a threat. It felt like a request, a desperate one. James made a decision that he knew was foolish. He unlocked his door and turned off the lights. Then he sat on his bed and waited. Hours passed. James began to think he had been wrong. Perhaps it was just a prank or a test of some kind. He was about to give up and go to sleep when he heard the soft sound of footsteps outside his door. The door slid open slowly. A figure stood in the doorway, wrapped in a dark cloak. James could not see the face, but he could see pale blue hands trembling at the edges of the hood. "May I come in?" a voice whispered. It was soft and musical, but also filled with fear. "Yes," James said. The figure stepped inside. The door closed behind her. She reached up and pushed back her hood, and James found himself looking at Princess Keleth. In the dim light from the stars outside, her blue skin seemed to glow faintly. Her dark eyes were huge and scared. "I should not be here," she said. "This is forbidden. If anyone discovers what I have done, the consequences would be severe. For both of us? Then why did you come?" James asked. Princess Keleth took a shaky breath. For a long moment, she did not answer. She stood near the door as if ready to run at any second. Her whole body was tense, like a frightened animal. "I have studied your species for many years," she finally said. "Humans are strange. You are weak compared to many races. You do not live very long. Your technology is primitive, and yet you do something that no other species in the galaxy does." "What is that?" James asked. "You feel," she said, "and you show it. You smile at strangers. You cry when you are sad. You laugh when you are happy. You do not hide what is inside you. I have watched recordings of humans for thousands of hours. I have read your books and studied your art, and I cannot understand how you survive." James was confused. "I do not understand the question." Princess Keleth moved closer. Her voice dropped even lower. "Among my people, showing emotion is the greatest weakness. It is shameful. It is dangerous. We are taught from birth to feel nothing, to show nothing. I thought this was the natural way for all civilized beings. But then I discovered humans, and everything I believed was called into question." She stopped directly in front of James, even in her fear. There was something in her eyes that looked like desperate hope. "Today in the hall, you smiled at me," she said. "You showed me kindness for no reason. You did not want anything from me. You were not trying to trick me or use me. You simply saw another being who was worried, and you tried to make her feel better. I've never experienced anything like that before." James did not know what to say. To him, a smile was nothing special. It was just what people did. "Why?" Princess Keleth asked. "Why did you smile at me? Why do humans do this? I must understand. My people are suffering, and I believe you might hold the answer to saving them. Please tell me, why do humans feel?" James looked at the alien princess standing in his small room, trembling with emotions she had been taught her whole life to suppress. He realized that this moment was important. More important than any trade negotiation or diplomatic summit? "Sit down," he said gently. "I will try to explain." The shy alien princess could no longer resist. "She came to my quarters, Part 2, Princess." Keleth sat down on the small chair near the window. She moved carefully, as if she might break something. James remained on his bed, giving her space. The starlight coming through the window made her blue skin look like deep water at night. "You want to know why humans feel?" James said slowly. "But that is like asking why we breathe. It is simply what we are." "That is not an answer," Keleth said. "Every species breathes because they need air to survive. There must be a reason why humans evolved to show their emotions openly. What advantage does it give you?" James thought about this question. No one had ever asked him to explain something so basic before. It was like being asked to explain why water is wet. I think he said carefully, "It is about connection. When I smile at someone, I am telling them that I am not a threat. I am telling them that I see them and I wish them well. When I cry, I am showing others that I am hurt and I need help. When I laugh, I am inviting others to share my joy. Every emotion we show is a message to the people around us." "But that makes you vulnerable," Caliph said. "If others know what you feel, they can use it against you. They can hurt you. They can manipulate you." Yes, James admitted. "That is true. Being open with our feelings is risky. Sometimes people do use our emotions against us. Sometimes we get hurt. But we have found that the benefits are greater than the risks." "What benefits?" James leaned forward. "When you hide everything you feel, you are alone. Even in a crowd of people, you are alone. No one truly knows you. No one can truly help you. But when you share your feelings, something amazing happens. You discover that other people feel the same things. You discover that you are not alone in your fears, your hopes, your sadness, your joy. And that connection, that knowledge that someone else understands you, it gives you strength." Kelith was quiet for a long moment. Her hands were folded in her lap, but James could see them trembling slightly. "Among my people," she said softly, "we believe that emotions are a sickness. We teach our children to suppress all feelings from a very young age. We consider ourselves superior because we have conquered this weakness. We look down on species like yours because you are slaves to your emotions. And yet you came to my quarters tonight," James said. "You are taking a huge risk to ask me about human feelings. That does not sound like someone who thinks emotions are worthless." Kelith looked up at him. For the first time, James saw something in her eyes that looked like pain. Real, deep, terrible pain. "My people are dying," she whispered. James felt his stomach tighten. "Dying? What do you mean?" "Not physically," Kelith said. "Our bodies are healthy. Our empire is strong. Our technology is advanced. But inside, we are hollow. For thousands of years, we have suppressed our emotions. We thought this made us better, but we were wrong." She stood up and walked to the window. She stared out at the stars, her back to James. "Do you know what happens when you tell a child never to feel? When you punish them every time they smile or cry? When you teach them that their natural instincts are shameful and wrong? At first, they learn to hide their feelings. Then, after enough time, they start to lose them entirely. They become empty." Her voice grew quieter. "My people have forgotten how to feel. Most Varanthi alive today have never experienced true joy or true sadness. They do not love their partners. They do not bond with their children. They exist, but they do not truly live." James stood up and moved closer to her. "Is this happening to you?" Kelith turned to face him. Her eyes were wet. James realized with shock that she was crying, perhaps for the first time in her life. The tears rolled down her blue cheeks like silver rain.
"I am
"Different," she said, her voice breaking. "I do not know why. Perhaps there was an error when I was born. Perhaps I am defective. But I feel things that other Varanthi cannot feel. I feel wonder when I look at the stars. I feel sadness when I see suffering. I feel curiosity about the universe. And I feel so terribly, terribly alone." James reached out and gently took her hand. Kelith flinched at the touch but did not pull away. "You are not defective," he said firmly. "You are exactly what you should be. Those feelings are not a sickness. They are what makes you alive." "But my people do not understand," Kelith said. "If they knew what I felt inside, they would think me mad. They would remove me from the line of succession. They might even lock me away to protect the family honor. So you have hidden all of this your entire life." Kelith nodded. "I have worn a mask since childhood. I pretend to be as empty as everyone else. No one knows the truth about me. Until now." James felt the weight of her trust. This alien princess, raised in a culture that despised emotion, had chosen him to share her deepest secret. It was terrifying and humbling at the same time. "Why me?" he asked. "Why did you choose to tell a human?" "Because you smiled at me," Kelith said simply. "In that moment, I saw something in your eyes that I had never seen from anyone else. I saw kindness without conditions. I saw warmth without motive. I realized that if anyone in this galaxy could understand what I feel, it would be a human. They stood in silence for a while, two beings from different worlds, connected by something that went beyond language or culture. "You said your people are dying," James finally said. "What did you mean by that?" Keleth wiped her tears with the back of her hand. "There is a sickness spreading through our empire. We call it the emptiness. Varanthi who suffer from it lose all will to do anything. They stop eating. They stop speaking. They simply sit and stare at nothing until their bodies fail. Our doctors cannot cure it because they do not understand the cause. But you do," James said. "I believe so. The emptiness is what happens when you suppress emotions for too long. The soul itself begins to die. Without joy, without sadness, without love, there is no reason to continue existing. My people have removed everything that makes life worth living, and now they are paying the price. How many are affected? It is spreading faster every year. Our government hides the true numbers, but I have seen the reports. If nothing changes, the Varanthi Empire could collapse within a few generations, not from war or disease, but from emptiness." James felt the enormity of what she was saying. An entire civilization was slowly dying from a lack of emotion. It was almost impossible to imagine what can be done. He asked. "I do not know," Keleth admitted. "That is why I came to you. Humans have what my people have lost. You understand emotions in a way we have forgotten. I thought perhaps you could teach me. And perhaps, someday, I could teach my people."
Ow.
"You want me to teach you how to feel?" "I already feel," Keleth said. "I just do not know how to express it. I do not know how to be what you are. I have suppressed my nature for so long that I have forgotten how to let it out. I need you to help me remember." James looked at her standing in the starlight, this powerful princess who ruled an empire but could not shed a tear in public. He thought about what she was asking. It was not a small thing. It could be dangerous for both of them, but he also thought about what she had told him. A whole species was dying because they had forgotten how to feel. If there was even a small chance that he could help, how could he refuse? "I will help you," he said. "I do not know if I can teach you everything, but I will try." For the first time since she entered his room, Keleth's face changed. It was not quite a smile, but something in her eyes softened, something that looked like hope. "Thank you," she whispered. "We should be careful," James said. "If anyone finds out about our meetings, we will both be in danger." "We'll be careful," Keleth promised. "I have been hiding my true self my entire life. I know how to keep secrets." She pulled her hood back over her head, hiding her face in shadow. Before she left, she turned back to look at James one more time. "You have given me something tonight that I have never had before," she said. "You have given me hope. I will not forget that." Then she slipped out the door and disappeared into the darkness of the ship. James sat down heavily on his bed. His heart was racing. He had just agreed to help an alien princess learn how to feel emotion. It sounded like the plot of some strange story, but it was happening. He did not sleep that night. He lay awake thinking about everything Keleth had told him, and he wondered if he was truly capable of doing what she asked. The next morning, James received a message summoning him to the Imperial throne chamber. Emperor Vorath himself wanted to speak with him. Someone had told the Emperor about his daughter's late-night visit, and now James had to face the consequences. The shy alien princess could no longer resist. She came to my quarters, Part 3. James walked toward the Imperial throne chamber with two Varanthi guards at his sides. His mouth was dry, and his hands were shaking slightly. He tried to remember everything he knew about Emperor Vorath. The ruler of the Varanthi Empire was said to be over 800 years old. He had conquered dozens of worlds and destroyed countless enemies. He was considered the most dangerous being in 3 star systems. And James had visited his daughter's quarters in the middle of the night. Or rather, she had visited his. Either way, he expected this meeting to end very badly for him. The doors to the throne chamber were massive, made of some dark metal that seemed to absorb light. They opened silently, and James stepped into the largest room he had ever seen. The ceiling was so high that it disappeared into shadow. The walls were lined with statues of ancient Varanthi warriors. At the far end of the room, on a throne carved from a single piece of crystal, sat Emperor Vorath. The emperor was tall and thin, with blue skin that was darker than his daughter's. His eyes were like two black holes, showing nothing, revealing nothing. He wore simple robes of gray, with no jewels or decorations. He did not need such things. His presence alone was enough to make James feel like an insect. "Come forward, human," the emperor said. His voice was deep and cold. James walked a long distance to the throne. Every step felt like walking toward his own execution. When he finally reached the foot of the throne, he bowed deeply. "You may rise," the emperor said. "I prefer to see the faces of those I speak with." James straightened up and forced himself to meet the emperor's eyes. It was one of the hardest things he had ever done. "You are Commander James Chen of Earth," the emperor said. It was not a question. "You serve as junior diplomatic attaché for your species." "Yes, your majesty." "And last night my daughter visited your quarters." James felt his heart stop. There was no point in lying. The Varanthi clearly had ways of knowing these things. "Yes, your majesty." He waited for the anger. He waited for the guards to seize him. But the emperor simply studied him with those empty black eyes. "Tell me what you discussed," the emperor said. James hesitated. Keleth had trusted him with her deepest secrets. To reveal them now would be a terrible betrayal. But refusing an emperor's direct question might get him killed. "With respect, your majesty," James said carefully, "the princess spoke to me in confidence. I do not feel right sharing her private words without her permission." The throne chamber was completely silent. James could feel the guards behind him tense, ready to act if their emperor gave the command. He waited for his death sentence. Instead, something unexpected happened. The corner of the emperor's mouth twitched. It was not quite a smile, but it was close. "Interesting," the emperor said. "You would risk your life to protect my daughter's privacy. Most beings in your position would tell me everything immediately to save themselves. I gave her my word, your majesty." "And the word of a human is worth more than your own survival?" James thought about this question. "Suppose it is, your majesty. At least to me." The emperor leaned back on his throne. "My daughter has been studying humanity for many years. She has read thousands of your books and watched countless recordings of your people. I know this because I have been watching her." James felt surprised. "You know about her research?" "I am emperor. I know everything that happens in my domain." Vorath paused. "I also know that she is different from other Varanthi. She feels things that our people are not supposed to feel. She has hidden this well, but not well enough to escape my notice, your majesty." "I meant no disrespect," by the emperor raised a hand, cutting him off. "I did not bring you here to punish you, Commander Chen. I brought you here because you might be useful." James blinked. This was not what he had expected at all. "Useful how?" "My daughter believes that human emotions could save our people from the emptiness. I have been skeptical of this theory. Emotions are chaos. They lead to poor decisions and weakness. This has always been the belief of my people." The emperor's eyes narrowed. "But I am also a practical ruler. The emptiness is spreading. Our traditional methods are not working. Perhaps it is time to try something different." James struggled to understand what was happening. The most powerful being in the galaxy was asking for his help. "What do you want me to do?" James asked. "I want you to prove that human emotions are strength, not weakness," the emperor said. "I am going to give you a test. You pass. I will consider my daughter's theories more seriously. If you fail, you will be sent away in disgrace, and my daughter will be forbidden from further contact with humans." "What kind of test?" The emperor gestured to one of his guards, who pressed a button on a small device. A holographic image appeared in the air between them. It showed two alien species that James did not recognize. They were surrounded by their respective fleets of warships. "These are the Karathian, the Mendrix," the emperor explained.
"Ow."
"They are minor species, who both live in a distant part of my empire. They have been fighting over a mineral-rich asteroid field for 300 years. Thousands have died. Neither side will surrender, neither side will compromise." "And you want me to end their conflict?" "Tomorrow, representatives of both species will meet in a neutral chamber on this ship. They expect another round of fruitless arguments. Instead, they will find you waiting for them. You will have 1 hour to convince them to make peace. James stared at the hologram. Your Majesty, I know nothing about these species or their history. How am I supposed to resolve a 300-year war in 1 hour? That is your challenge, the Emperor said calmly. You may not use threats or weapons. You may not offer them money or resources. You may not lie or deceive them. You may only use your human methods. If those methods are as powerful as my daughter believes, you should succeed. It was an impossible task. James knew this. The Emperor probably knew it too. But refusing was not an option. I will try, Your Majesty, James said. Good. The Emperor stood up from his throne. He was even taller than James had realized. My daughter believes in you, Commander Chen. She believes that humans possess something valuable that we have lost. Hope for her sake that she is not wrong. James was escorted back to his quarters. His mind was spinning with everything that had just happened. He had gone from expecting execution to being given a chance to prove humanity's worth to an alien empire. He spent the rest of the day researching the Karathi and the Mendrix. About their history, their cultures, their grievances. He studied the asteroid field they were fighting over and tried to understand why it mattered so much to both sides. But the more he learned, the more hopeless the situation seemed. Both species had legitimate claims to the territory. Both had suffered terrible losses. Both were filled with hatred and distrust. How could anyone solve such a problem in 1 hour? That night, there was a soft knock on his door. James opened it to find Princess Kelith standing in the corridor, no longer hiding under a cloak. My father told me about the test, she said quietly. I am sorry. I did not mean for this to happen. It is not your fault, James said. Come in. Kelith entered and sat in the same chair as before. She looked worried, which James now recognized as a rare and significant expression for a Varanthi. I believe in you, she said. But I want you to know that if you fail, I will not blame you. No one could succeed at such an impossible task. Then why did your father give it to me? Because he needs to see for himself. He has heard theories about human emotions, but he does not believe them. He needs proof. Kelith looked down at her hands. My father is not a cruel man. He is simply a practical one. He will only change his mind if he sees evidence. James nodded slowly. Then I will have to give him evidence. How? Even our best. Diplomats have failed to resolve the Krothamendrix conflict. Your diplomats use logic and threats, James said. They try to calculate who deserves what, and then force both sides to accept it. But that approach ignores the most important part of any conflict. What part? James smiled. Feelings both sides are angry and hurt. They have lost family members and friends in this war. You cannot solve their problem without first addressing their pain. Logic comes later. First, you have to let them feel heard. Kelith stared at him. You really think that will work? I do not know, James admitted. But it is the human way. It is what I believe in. And tomorrow we will find out if it is enough. Kelith reached out and touched his hand. Her blue fingers were cool against his skin. Whatever happens, she said, thank you for trying. Thank you for believing that there is another way. James squeezed her hand gently. Get some rest, Princess. Tomorrow is going to be a long day for both of us. The shy alien princess could no longer resist. She came to my quarters, Part 4. The negotiation chamber was a circular room with white walls and a round table in the center. When James entered, he found representatives from both species already waiting. The Karathi delegate was a large creature with rough green skin and 4 arms. The Mendrix delegate was smaller, covered in silver feathers that rustled when she moved. Both of them looked at James with obvious confusion. Who are you? The Karathi demanded. His voice was like gravel. We were expecting a Varanthi mediator. My name's Commander James Chen. I am human. James sat down at the table across from them. The Emperor has asked me to help resolve your conflict today. The Mendrix made a harsh clicking sound that James recognized as laughter. A human. The youngest species in the galaxy is going to solve a problem that has lasted 300 years. This is an insult. Perhaps James said calmly, or perhaps it is an opportunity. Sometimes fresh eyes can see what others miss. There is nothing to see, the Karathi growled. The asteroid field belongs to us. It was within our space before the Mendrix even developed space travel. They have no claim. The minerals in that field are essential for our technology. The Mendrix snapped back. Your people do not even use them. You only want the field to keep it from us. It is a matter of principle. It's a matter of greed. They continued arguing, their voices growing louder and angrier. James let them go for several minutes without interrupting. He watched their faces, listened to their words, and tried to understand what was really happening beneath the surface. Finally, he raised his hand. May I ask you both a question? They fell silent and looked at him with annoyance. How many of your people have died in this conflict? The Karathi's four fists clenched. Thousands. Good warriors. All of them. Cut down by Mendrix weapons. And you? James looked at the Mendrix delegate. Her feathers flattened against her body, a sign of distress. We do not count anymore. The numbers became too painful. Entire families have been lost. Children who never grew up. Parents who never came home. James nodded slowly. So both of your peoples have suffered terribly. Both have lost loved ones. Both carry wounds that 300 years have not healed. That is obvious, the Karathi said. What is your point? My point is that you are both in pain, and neither of you has ever acknowledged the other's pain. Talk about territory and resources and principles. But you never talk about the grief. You never talk about the fear. You never talk about the real reasons this war continues. The room was quiet. Both delegates looked uncomfortable. Let me tell you something about my people, James continued. Humans have fought many wars throughout our history. Terrible wars that killed millions. For a long time, we believed that the way to end a war was through strength. You defeat your enemy, you force them to surrender, and then you dictate terms. But we learned that this approach never truly ends a conflict. It just plants the seeds for the next war.
How?
Then what does end a war? The Mendrix asked. Her voice was softer now. Understanding, James said. You have to understand your enemy. Not just their demands, but their fears. Their hopes, their pain. You have to see them as people, not as monsters. And they have to see you the same way. The Karathi shifted in his seat. The Mendrix are not people. They are vermin who steal what is not theirs. And what do the Mendrix think of the Karathi? James asked. The Mendrix delegate hesitated. We think they are cruel giants who care only about domination. We think they would destroy us completely if they had the chance. James looked at the Karathi. Would you? Would you destroy the Mendrix completely if you could? The Karathi was silent for a long moment. Then, slowly, he shook his head. No, we do not wish for their extinction. We only want them to stop attacking our ships. We only want our people to be safe. And you? James asked the Mendrix. If the Karathi agreed to share the asteroid field, would you stop attacking them? Of course we would. We never wanted this war. We only fought because we had no other choice. Our people needed those minerals to survive. James leaned forward. So let me understand. The Karathi do not want to destroy the Mendrix. The Mendrix do not want to destroy the Karathi. Both of you want safety for your people. Both of you have been fighting because you thought you had no other choice. Is that correct? Both delegates looked at each other. Something in the room had changed. The anger was still there, but it had been joined by something else. Confusion, perhaps, or the beginning of doubt. Tell me about your daughter, James said suddenly to the Karathi. The delegate blinked his small eyes. What? I read that you have a daughter. She died in a battle 12 years ago. What was she like? The Karathi's rough face changed. For just a moment, James saw something behind the fierce exterior. Something broken? Her name was Thraka. She was young and brave. She wanted to be a pilot like her mother. She had never even seen combat before the day she died. I'm sorry, James said gently. That must have been very painful. The Karathi said nothing, but his forehands were trembling. James turned to the Mendrix. You lost someone too, did you not? The silver feathers on the delegate's body were completely flat now. Her eyes were wet. My brother. He was a teacher, not a soldier. His transport ship was destroyed by mistake. The Korathi claimed it was carrying weapons. It was carrying school supplies, a teacher the Korathi repeated quietly. Not a warrior. No. He had never hurt anyone in his life. The room was silent again, but it was a different kind of silence. The two delegates were looking at each other differently now. Not as enemies, but as two beings who had both lost something precious. This is what humans understand, James said. Pain is universal. Grief is universal. Love is universal. Your species may look different and speak different languages, but inside, you feel the same things. You love your families. You mourn your dead. You want your children to be safe and happy? You stood up and walked around the table to stand between them? 300 years ago, your ancestors started fighting over rocks in space. But this war is not about rocks anymore. It is about fear. It is about hatred that has been passed down through generations. It is about children who grew up being told that the other side is evil and must be destroyed. James looked at each of them in turn. But what if that is wrong? What if the other side is not evil at all? What if they are just people like you who are scared and hurt and want to protect their families? What would happen if you decided to stop seeing each other as enemies? The Mendrix delegate made a soft sound that might have been a sob. My brother would still be dead, as James agreed. He would. Nothing can change the past, but you can change the future. You can decide that no more teachers die. You can decide that no more young pilots die. You can look at the Korathi delegate and say, your daughter did not deserve to die, and perhaps he can look at you and say, neither did your brother. The two delegates stared at each other across the table. Years of hatred and mistrust hung in the air between them. James held his breath. Then slowly, the Korathi spoke. Your brother, the teacher, he did not deserve to die. I am sorry for your loss. The Mendrix was crying openly now, tears running down her feathered face. Your daughter Thraka, she did not deserve to die either. I am sorry. James felt his own eyes growing wet. This is the beginning, he said. This is how peace starts. Not with treaties and territory divisions. With two people looking at each other and recognizing shared pain, everything else can come later. For the next 30 minutes, they talked. Not about the asteroid field or mineral rights or trade agreements. They talked about their families, their hopes, their fears. They talked about what they wanted for their children and grandchildren. They talked about what peace would look like by the end of the hour. They had agreed to return to their governments with a proposal for shared access to the asteroid field. It was not a final solution, but it was a start. More importantly, they left the room not as enemies, but as two beings who had glimpsed each other's humanity. When James walked out of the negotiation chamber, he found Emperor Voreth waiting in the corridor. The ancient ruler's face was as blank as ever, but his eyes seemed different somehow. Less cold, more curious. I watched the entire session, the Emperor said. I've never seen anything like it. Did I pass your test, Your Majesty? The Emperor did not answer directly. Instead, he said, I have ruled this empire for 800 years. I have seen wars and victories and defeats. I thought I understood everything about power and leadership. But today, a human showed me something I had never considered. Perhaps emotions are not weakness after all. Perhaps they are a different kind of strength. He turned and walked away, his robes trailing behind him. James watched him go, feeling exhausted but hopeful. In the shadows at the end of the corridor, Princess Keleth was watching. When her father passed her, he paused for just a moment. Something wordless passed between them. Then he continued on. And Keleth ran toward James with something on her face that looked almost like joy. The shy alien princess could no longer resist. She came to my quarters, Part 5, the weeks that followed the negotiation. Everything changed. Emperor Vorath gave James permission to continue teaching his daughter about human emotions. They met every evening in the private gardens aboard the flagship. It's a beautiful space filled with alien plants from 100 different worlds. Keleth learned to smile, to laugh, to express what she felt inside. It was difficult for her at first. Generations of conditioning fought against every lesson. But slowly, day by day, she began to open up. I never knew the world could feel so bright, she told James one evening. They were sitting beside a fountain that sparkled with bioluminescent water. Before, everything was gray and flat. Now, I see colors everywhere. That is what happens when you let yourself feel, James said. The world does not change. You change. You become more alive. News of the Korathemendrix peace agreement spread throughout the ship. Other species began asking questions about the human, who had ended a 300-year war with words instead of weapons. James found himself receiving invitations from ambassadors and diplomats who wanted to learn about this strange human method called empathy. But not everyone was happy with these developments. A group of conservative Varanthi nobles watched the changes with growing alarm. For thousands of years, their people had believed that emotions were weakness. Now the princess was learning to feel, and even the emperor seemed interested in human methods. If this continued, everything they believed in would be called into question. James learned about the conspiracy 3 days before the closing ceremony of the summit. A young Varanthi servant approached him in the corridor, her face pale with fear. "Commander Chen, you must be careful," she whispered. "There are nobles who believe you have corrupted the princess. They are planning something terrible." "What kind of something?" "I do not know the details, but I heard them talking about the closing ceremony. They want to remove the princess and anyone connected to her human corruption." The servant looked around nervously. "Please, be careful. These are powerful people. They will stop at nothing to preserve the old ways." James thanked her and immediately tried to find Keleth. But the princess was surrounded by handlers and guards preparing for the closing ceremony. James could not get close to her. He sent her messages but received no response. Either she was too busy to check them, or someone was blocking his communications. He considered going to the emperor, but decided against it. If he made accusations against powerful nobles without proof, it could make things worse. He needed to find another way. The closing ceremony was held in the Grand Assembly Hall, the largest space on the ship. Representatives from all 12 species gathered to celebrate the successful summit. Emperor Vorath sat on a raised platform at the front of the hall. Princess Keleth stood beside him. Wearing ceremonial robes of deep purple, James watched from the back of the crowd, trying to spot any sign of danger. He noticed several nobles standing in a cluster near the side of the hall. Their faces were blank, like all Varanthi faces, but something about their body language seemed wrong. They kept glancing at Keleth and whispering to each other. Then James saw something that made his blood run cold. One of the nobles had a small device hidden in his sleeve. It was partially covered by fabric. But James caught a glimpse of metal when the noble moved his arm. James knew he had only seconds to act. He pushed through the crowd, ignoring the annoyed sounds from other diplomats. He reached the front of the hall just as the noble raised his arm and pointed the device at Keleth. "Look out!" James shouted. Everything happened at once. The noble fired. A beam of blue light shot toward the princess, and James threw himself in front of her. He expected to feel pain. Instead, he felt nothing. The beam struck something invisible just in front of him and scattered harmlessly into the air. Keleth had stepped forward and was standing in front of James, her hand raised. A personal shield generator on her wrist had activated, protecting them both. "You tried to save me," she said, her voice filled with wonder. "You put yourself between me and danger?" "Of course I did," James said, his heart still racing. "That is what friends do." The hall had erupted into chaos. Guards rushed toward the noble who had fired the weapon. Other conspirators tried to flee but were quickly captured. Emperor Vorath stood up from his throne, his face showing more emotion than James had ever seen from a Varanthi. "Stop," Keleth said loudly. The room fell silent. Everyone turned to look at the princess. "I wish to speak," she said. She stepped away from James and walked to the center of the stage. Her handlers moved to stop her, but a gesture from the emperor held them back. "For my entire life," Keleth began, "I have hidden who I truly am. I have worn a mask, pretending to be empty like all Varanthi are supposed to be. I believed that my feelings were a defect, something shameful that must be concealed." She paused and looked out at the assembly. Hundreds of alien faces stared back at her. "But I was wrong. My feelings are not a defect. They are a gift, and I am not the only one who has this gift. All Varanthi are born with the capacity to feel. We have simply forgotten how. We have suppressed our emotions for so long that we are dying from the inside. The emptiness that plagues our people is not a disease. It is the consequence of cutting ourselves off from everything that makes life meaningful. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. The Varanthi delegates looked shocked. Some looked angry, but others looked curious. A few weeks ago, a human taught me something important, Keleth continued. He taught me that vulnerability is not weakness. It is courage. He taught me that sharing our feelings creates connection, and connection creates strength. He taught me that it is possible to feel everything and still be powerful. She turned to look at her father. The emperor sat motionless on his throne, watching his daughter with ancient eyes. Father, I know this is not what you expected of me. I know I am breaking with thousands of years of tradition, but our traditions are killing us. If we do not change, we will disappear. Not because of enemies or disease, but because we have forgotten why life is worth living. Keleth's voice grew stronger. I am not asking anyone to abandon their pride or their strength. I am asking them to add something new. To remember how to feel joy and sadness, love and grief, to connect with each other as living beings, not as empty masks. That is the only way forward for our people. She stopped speaking. The hall was completely silent. Then Emperor Voreth stood up. He walked slowly down from his platform and crossed the stage to stand in front of his daughter. For a long moment, they faced each other without speaking. We're very brave, the Emperor said quietly. Perhaps the bravest Varanthi I have ever known. Does that mean you are angry with me? No. The Emperor reached out and did something that made the entire hall gasp. He placed his hand gently on his daughter's cheek. It means I am proud of you, and I believe you may be right. Keleth's eyes filled with tears. She embraced her father, the first hug between Varanthi, royalty, and centuries. The crowd watched in stunned silence. The summit ended with an unprecedented announcement. The Varanthi Empire would begin a cultural exchange program with Earth, studying human emotional practices. Princess Keleth would lead this initiative personally, and Commander James Chen was offered a permanent position as humanity's first ambassador to the Varanthi Imperial Court. That night, after all the ceremonies were over, Keleth came to James's quarters one last time. But this time, she did not hide in a cloak. She walked openly through the corridors, her head held high. You changed everything, she said when he opened his door. You changed me. You changed my father. You may have changed my entire species. I did not do anything special, James said. I just told the truth. The rest was all you. Keleth smiled. It was a beautiful smile, full of warmth and joy and hope. A smile that no Varanthi had worn in thousands of years. Will you stay? She asked. Not just as an ambassador. As a friend? James looked at the alien princess standing in his doorway. He thought about everything that had happened since she first visited his quarters in the middle of the night. He thought about how much they had both learned, and he thought about how much more they could learn together. Yes, he said. I will stay. Keleth took his hand, and they walked together toward the observation deck to watch the stars. Behind them, the galaxy stretched out in infinite beauty. Ahead of them lay a future that neither of them could have imagined just a few weeks ago. It had all started with a smile, a simple human gesture that meant nothing to most species in the universe. But sometimes the smallest things can change everything. And sometimes the courage to feel is the greatest power of all.